I feel guilty for saying this, but I am relieved after my kid is institutionalized permanently. Originally posted by you, What I Have to Say 1 in R. True Off My Chest on September 24th. 22. Updated October 20th. 22. I have changed the initials to fake names. Oops, account had since been suspended. Trigger warning. Mental health. Suicide attempts. Attempted murder. Less than. Odd is oppositional defiant disorder and IED is intermittent explosive disorder. A quick Google search describes them as oppositional defiant disorder. Odd includes a frequent and ongoing pattern of anger, irritability, arguing and defiance toward parents and other authority figures. Intermittent explosive disorder, IED, involves repeated, sudden episodes of impulsive, aggressive, violent behavior or angry verbal outbursts in which you react grossly out of proportion to the situation. Original post. I feel guilty for saying this, but I am relieved after my kid is institutionalized permanently. I feel like a bad person saying this, but here we go. My therapist also advised me to write here so I can feel more free. I, 46M, have 2 kids, Adam, 20M, and Ben, 15M. This is about Ben. I wish I could word this differently, but since age 1, we could sense something was wrong with Ben. He was always angry at something. Some days he would be an angel, but most of the times, he was a wrecking ball. At first, us and his pediatrician thought it was trouble twos, but it just continued. If his brother or a kid got his toy or his stuff, he would beat that kid and bite him, her. He was fired from 4 kindergartens at age 5, and we were at the doors of a child psychiatrist at age 5. Our journey started with an odd diagnosis, but after the randomness of constant anger attacks, he was diagnosed with IED at age 7. We thought we would have the answers and he would be treated. We were very wrong at the second part. Due to him having a fame, we have changed the school district. We live in EU, not in US. But it did not change. He still had tantrums, and due to this, he has been in severe depression. It is heart-wrenching to see an 8-year-old to have depression. They don't have the childish happiness and hope. We have tried everything. We even had private tutors for him so he could be less exposed to the school environment. We even arranged special education, and he has been in really supportive schools for mental diseases, but it still continued, and at age 10, we had the first suicide attempt. He hung himself up with my belt in his brother's room. Then at age 12, he stole his mom's, my wife's heart medication. She has arrhythmia, and put himself in a comatose state. The next 4 years were hell. We had to send our older son to live with his grandparents at a different city, and our house was like a mental health unit. We had a caretaker who lived with us fully, and we couldn't use any kind of sharp or stab objects in the house. I learned how suicide-proof rooms were done because we had to made it built to our house. If he wasn't committing suicide, his anger was directed outside. At age 14, he wasn't allowed to enter any public building in the town because he tried to beat someone or smashed down a window. He spent more days at a ward than outside. But 3 months ago, he reached to a new level. Until that day, he never tried to murder someone, but at that day, he was almost killing. He had to stay in ICU for a month. A 8-year-old kid for beeping with his bike while he was right in front of our house. He managed to open the door, and he choked the kid until my wife became aware and hit his head with a pan. After that day, a judge ordered him to permanently institutionalized at a mental health center. I wish I could say I was sad, but I feel happy. For the first time in 3 months, I feel nothing but joy and happiness. Me, my wife and Adam had a great week together since ages, and we had our long-deserved vacation. I might look cruel, but I can't think of anything but relief. I should feel guilty for saying he is government's problem anymore, but I don't, and it makes me feel guilty. I don't know if I love my son anymore, but I feel glad. I am grateful to know he won't be around us anymore. I wish I could feel a little more remorseful, but I can't. Maybe this is the thing that makes me remorseful. Update 3 weeks later. So, I am back again. Multiple parents with kids whom has IED have written and said they have felt the same guilt, but after the permanent care, their life quality have been improved dramatically, and I can attest to that. Since that last post, we have been to his institute twice. In first visit he was sedated and we saw him while he was sleeping, though at second visit he wasn't sedated and he was much calmer. He said he strangled that kid so he would be killed at prison. He said he had read about child murderers would be killed at prison, so he thought he would finally be free. He said he still wanted to get out of this world. He said, "I just gave up. Maybe I will die here peacefully, but I know it shouldn't be at their expense. Please tell the kid's family my apologies if you can." After this, we had a talk with his psychiatrist. She said, "It was one of the best insights we have gotten from him, and we have an idea, but to be honest, be prepared for the idea of permanent residency." My wife shed a lot of tears, but me and his brother were relieved. A said, "Some of us are not for this world, and due to luck, it is my brother. Maybe he will feel happy here one day." It is not a good update, but writing here, it just helps me feel a bit at ease. My wife is still sad not seeing our kid at house. She is grieving Ben's loss in a way. Maybe in the future he will have a sense of normalcy, but neither his brother nor me have our hopes high on that. Reminder: do not comment on the original posts or contact the original poster. I am not the original poster. This is a repost. In my hometown, a family went through this until the child ultimately attacked his father and either severely injured or killed him. So many were quick to judge. And the poor mother opened up KN social media and walked through all of her attempts to get help, all of which had been denied. She had done legitimately everything she could possibly have done, and the system failed her at every possible level in every possible manner. Since then, I have had so much empathy and respect for parents like Op who are doing everything they can in an absolutely impossible situation. There's a counselor at my college who talks openly about his son. Last I heard he was on a medication that makes him still angry at the world but less violent. IIRC the kid is 10. I couldn't imagine how tough it is. This one is so rough. I feel for the family. It reminds me of that one post where the father was writing about his extremely violent son. The father and his wife and their young child had to hide in the basement for weeks until the son finally disappeared, and to this day the father has no idea what happened to him. Glad this family got help before the situation got worse. Edit. Here's the link to the other story I mentioned. My much younger cousin has an IED. He tried to kill his brother in the middle of the night when he was 6 with a knife and was stopped by an incredible stroke of luck by his dad. He would bite you until you bled since he was too young. He had an experimental brain electric node type therapy at 8 from a college near his home. He was taken to the countless times for violent outbursts at home and school. He finally was sent away at 10 when he tried to kill my grandmother with a metal pipe and shattered both bones in her arm. These disorders are serious and can destroy families. He's only 12, but he's so terrifying, and I will never be alone in a room with him for the rest of my life. Damn, pretty heartbreaking. As a parent, I can't even imagine what it's like dealing with a child with serious mental issues like that. So sad for the family. The mother of Nancy Spungen, girlfriend of Sid Vicious, who was murdered in strange circumstances in the 1970s. wrote a book called, "And I Don't Want to Live This Life," about her daughter, and it has a lot of similarities to this case. From her first steps, Nancy was hurting people. Her first words were cruel. The parents had to live in 2 different houses, one with each child, because 7-year-old Nancy kept trying to kill her brother. She was sectioned at the age of 12. Her mother said learning of Nancy's death was actually a relief, as painful as that was to admit. In We Need to Talk About Kevin, the narrator describes how her son seems to feel resentment over the fact that he is forced to live in a world that holds zero enjoyment or pleasure for him. She specifically stated that he didn't have a low self-esteem. In fact, he thought very highly of himself. She compares his aggressive behaviors to the way people pinch themselves to remind themselves they're awake, or something like that. It really made me think. People like OP's son are just incapable of happiness or pleasure or even basic stimulation from their environment. And intense violent reactions are literally the only thing that can come close to providing any sense of stimulation. What an incredible novel that is. This poor family and son. It's clear he was born this way. I wish there were more treatments for the condition so that the son wouldn't have to feel desperately depressed every moment he was not angry. Clearly an institution is the best place for him right now. There are some mental illnesses that absolutely require institutionalization. I'm so sad but also relieved for this poor family. This one is personal for me, because I was diagnosed with OD and IED at similar ages. About 1.5 years after OP's kid or so. But the truth was I was being sexually abused, which led me to distrust adults. And when I told my mother, she didn't believe me. I later told my doctor, who also thought I was making things up. Because of that, I never respected adults, especially those who were supposed to have authority over me. I was angry all the time, suicidal, and would do the opposite of anything an authority told me out of instinct. I was temporarily institutionalized at 13 and it was meant to be permanent at 14. But I was lucky enough to have an uncle who was a special ed teacher who took me in. For a long time, I had a lot of distrust in all mental health diagnoses, because those diagnoses and the medication I was put on ended up running cover for the people abusing me. If it wasn't for my uncle taking a risk on me, and if it wasn't for an MMO I played that introduced me to a lot of friends who knew what I was going through, I think I'd still be in an institution. I can't imagine all the things this family has gone through. Their situation is just so terrible and sad. I feel bad for everyone because the kid seems to get there is something horribly wrong with him that he can't control and can't fix. I feel awful about my ADHD and Asperger's and how it affects the people in my life. Having it spill over to actual violence and have moments where you realize how awful that is, but still not able to control it, has to be hell. I was diagnosed with IED when I was 18. My teenage years were hell. It's really easy to find yourself welling up with anger. The smallest thing can seem like such a huge pool of emotion outside of puberty, obviously. I know enough now at 30 what it looks like and how to help control the situation and avoid things I know that will set me off. I am very lucky to not have ended up the same way. I feel for the whole family here. Life isn't easy sometimes and it feels like these guys had it rough. My stepson was very similar and that relief is such a surreal feeling. It's a terrible feeling to be relieved not to be around the kid you helped raise. Something like 25% of parents report feeling resentful about having children. I'm remembering numbers from grad school more than 10 years ago. So don't ask me to provide a source. And feeling guilty for it. They remember the relative freedom they used to have and hate that the responsibilities of parenthood have taken that away from them. Those are just people with regular kids. I can't blame Whoop at all for being relieved that his son is put away after so many years of stress and fear. I feel sorry for the mother, though. The guilt must be worse for her being the one who had to stop her son with a frying pan to the head. She was completely justified, but it still goes against everything society ingrains in us to think goes into being a good mother. And I'm sure the cognitive dissonance is excruciating. My oldest is 16. He has autism, ADHD, bipolar disorder and psychotic episodes. I had to put him in a group home because he kept attacking me. He would pick me up and throw me. He would slam me against walls and choke me. I cried for weeks after he went to the group home. But it was the right choice. He calls me almost daily. He is on more medicines and has access to even more therapies than before. I feel for the Oop. I know how awful it is to watch your child be so angry and aggressive. I hope his kid is happier now. My brother was so violent my parents pulled him from 5th grade and homeschooled him to keep him under control. However, they wanted him to not be alone. So they pulled me out of 4th grade and homeschooled us till 11th grade. He did not get control of his anger and just directed it at me. We haven't spoken since I was 17. This poor boy. I can't imagine walking around so angry and depressed all the time that I would try to kill a child, so that I'd end up in jail, so that someone could finally put me out of my misery. I have 2 siblings with AUD and IED, and I can tell you it definitely affects them both differently. The first definitely belongs in a home and is absolutely a manipulative and abusive time bomb waiting to go off, who should have been institutionalized, and the youngest can't control her outbursts and occasionally will get physical with other people but actively takes medicine to calm her down. Dealing with kids who have these disorders is hard. As someone who works with people IED, I completely get OP's perspective. The amount of stress it gives is so tiring, and especially if the individual is larger person. I wish him and his family happiness in the future.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.